Hello, party people. Going live on Instagram on my cell phone. Oh, I wish I had a picture that I could show you all. Hi, Instagram. Let's go. All right. Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday night. Tonight is the first of our series about right hemisphere. What does that even mean? So we know that we have two sides of the brain, right? Left hemisphere in a right-handed person controls language. That's where the motor planning for our speech mechanism is. It's where, right behind our ear is the lobe that processes what we hear. And then it goes through a series into the left hemisphere to find memories and words and put your sentences together. But the right hemisphere is a little bit of a different animal. And I think it's really important to talk about the right hemisphere because what can happen when your loved one has had a stroke? And the doctor says, yeah, it was something on the right hemisphere. You might be noticing changes, and yet there's no diagnosis to go with it. It's not like someone who's had a stroke impacting the left side and they have aphasia, which is a language disorder, something that's impacted their speaking, listening, reading, writing, right? That's very concrete. It's very noticeable. You understand what that means. But the right hemisphere is a little bit different in that there can be subtle changes, but not a diagnosis to go with it. So you might think, this looks like my loved one, but they're not the same. So this is, like I said, this is the first of 4 episodes where we're going to get into right hemisphere. And it's so important to start understanding the differences between the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain. So I've got a bunch of notes here. I'm going to refer back to them as we go through this episode, but I'm going to try and do my best to stay on topic. All right, so a left hemisphere stroke, left side of the brain. This is for a right-handed person. So whether you know this or not, I will be redundant. Left side of the brain controls the right side of the body. The right side of the brain controls the left side of the body. So knowing that, if you have a left hemisphere stroke, you may, depending on where your damage was in the brain, you may have weakness on the right side of the body. Same thing, right side of the brain, you may have weakness, you may not have weakness. It's not a clear cut this and then this, right? So there's going to be lots of variations. Plus, there's variations between people. So the left hemisphere, speech and word retrieval, coming up with the words you want to say. Grammar, sentence structure, think back to 6th grade, 7th grade. You're learning how to conjugate verbs. You're learning about prepositions. That's grammar and sentence structure. The words that we put in order. English has words that go in a certain order. If you speak Spanish, it's a different order, right? It's the adjective. I won't even pretend to remember. I don't speak a foreign language. I've tried. I'm just going to stick with English. It's hard enough for me. But the point is, every language has their own grammar sentence structure. And we have to pay attention to that. So left hemisphere also controls reading and writing. So the right hemisphere, you may have already started to perceive this in your loved one, or if you are the one who's had the right hemisphere stroke. Understanding tone, humor, and implied meaning. I have a very good friend of mine who, for whatever reason, does not understand sarcasm. And so if I were to say something sarcastic, that kind of dry sense of humor, she may not understand it, but she has learned to ask, "Is that sarcastic?" Right? So because she can't interpret it, she knows how to ask about it. So other things the right hemisphere does, recognizing emotions and facial expressions. I can be expressive, I cannot be expressive, as everyone can be. So, does your person perceive your facial expression? If you're surprised or angry, I shouldn't even bother to try because I'm no actress. Processing how things are said, not just what is said. That's part of the right hemisphere. So, and then we also have attention and spatial awareness. So it's where things are related in space. They might have difficulty with depth perception. They may have issues, someone who has had a right hemisphere stroke. I have seen it, I have witnessed it, and if you've not perceived it or witnessed it yourself, you may not believe me. But you can have what's called a left neglect. So if you think about, I'm going to hold up a piece of paper. Pretend this is a plate. So someone who has a left neglect, if we were to draw an imaginary line down this plate, this lovely yellow plate that I have in front of me, they will literally eat food from that line and to the right. They will not perceive from that middle line to the left. So it's literally like someone put a piece of dental floss through the plate and said, "You can only eat this right side of the dental floss." And they don't understand it. It's not that they don't want to, it's not that they're being obstinate, it's not that they're not trying, it's that their brain is not perceiving it. So that's called the left neglect. We're not going to get into that a whole lot in this episode, but if you have questions about it or comments, please put them in the comments, put them in the chat, and I will do my best to respond to those. Okay, so let's keep going. So someone who has had a right brain stroke will still speak fluently. They're going to talk just like I'm talking. They're going to sound normal. Their understanding of conversations, emotions, and space may be very different. So they may be talking, but they may not be on the outside coming across to you how they used to. Ooh. Okay, so let's go into an example. I've got lots of notes in front of me, folks, so I want to stay on track, so I'm going to partially read from these. And if you're here in the comments, will you give me a wave? Will you send a heart? Will you send something? Send me some love because I'm here for you and I'd just really love to know that you're out there listening. Okay, so we have an example of a dinner example. The spouse says, "Honey, do you think we should invite Betty and Jim to dinner?" And she's looking right at her husband and she gets no response. She gets no reaction. It's almost like he's not there, right? So what could be happening in that stroke survivor's brain? So I've got one, two, three, four things that could be happening. And there may be more, but here's the biggest ones. Number one, processing delay. Their brain is working hard to make sense of what you just said. They're so busy processing that they aren't able to come up with an automatic response or formulate the response in the time that you would expect them to respond. Number two, They may be focusing on the wrong detail. They might latch onto just one part of the sentence. Maybe they heard Sunday and they're busy processing. Okay, today's Wednesday and Sunday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Okay, so 4 days from now. So they could they could still be back on the word Sunday and processing how many days is that from right now and have missed the whole rest of what you just said. They are stuck trying to recall that detail and they missed the rest of your sentence. The third thing that could be going on, they could have difficulty switching gears. They were focused on something else. Maybe there's TV going on in the background. Maybe they're watching soccer, Arsenal, right? Their favorite team is on. Or if it's basketball season, they're watching the Lakers. Woo, go Lakers. Whatever it is, if they are doing something else, you have to bring them to you. And as you being the spouse, the care partner, the significant other, you have to make sure that you've got their attention. If there's something competing like a sports game and that's really important to them, you're not going to win. I'm telling you that in a whisper, because I don't want to yell at you, but you're not going to win. I love when I'm sitting here in my office and my kitchen's not that far away, but we have a little pony wall, like a half wall. And behind that is the coffee maker. And what I find hilarious, my husband knows what I do for a living, right? He, let's see, in 5 days from now, 33 years together. The man knows what I do for a living. And sometimes he doesn't project, and sometimes he mumbles. And yes, I'm throwing him under the bus right now. Sorry, honey. But the point is, I'm trying to drive this point home. If he's standing behind that wall and he's running the coffee machine, I am not going to hear every word that he says, nor did he get my attention. Because when I'm sitting in my office, I'm not just sitting here watching kitten videos. I'm working, I'm like the mad scientist. I'm here plugging away on the keyboard, and he's not done anything to grab my attention. I'm trying to drive this point home for you folks. You have to get your person's attention. The best thing my husband can do for me, and this is going, apply this to your own situation. He walks in here. I literally, even if I'm in the middle of a thought, I put my hands on the desk and I look at him and I do my damnedest to give him my attention. I may still think of it like this. Think of it like a really heavy wheel. Think like solid block wheel, like giant wheel, hundreds of pounds. That wheel is spinning. And I'm thinking, and he comes in to interrupt me. It takes a while for that wheel to slow down. Does this make sense? That wheel has got to slow down enough to where I can stop it and shift my attention. I'll bet if you think about that example, that that happens to you and you've not had a stroke. Think of it as 1,000 times worse for your person who has aphasia or a right hemisphere stroke. Just because your person with a right hemisphere stroke doesn't have a diagnosis of something that has changed doesn't mean nothing has changed, because you're perceiving that there's a change, right? There is something different, and you probably can't quite put your finger on it. So let's keep going. So that was number 3. That was difficulty switching gears. Emotional disconnect. If frustration crosses their face, it's not necessarily frustration with you. It might be frustration with their own brain not being able to shift, not being able to process, not being able to keep up or do what they wanted to do. So, this is what I find super interesting talking to survivors. And it does take a while to get through to survivors, to get them to be introspective, to get them to think about how is their brain actually working. And what they often say is that they notice things are different, but they don't, but because of the stroke, they don't necessarily connect that something is different to talking about what is different. There may be a situation where they notice something and it's like that undercurrent. It's like that subconscious thought, right? It's that inner voice that's telling you something, but you have to pay attention to it, right? To bring it forward. So someone who has had a right hemisphere stroke can have this emotional disconnect. They may have this frustration and they don't know how to process it, cope with it. They may not be perceiving the frustration on your face. They may not be perceiving that your tone of voice is such that you are frustrated or aggravated, or you're happy, or you're sad, or you're whatever you are. They may not be able to perceive your emotions, nor can they necessarily process their emotions. Again, I am painting with a broad brush here, but it needs to be said. There are changes. And I know that there are changes that are not diagnosed because I am in the Facebook groups. I am reading your posts, whether you are the stroke care partner, you're the spouse, significant other care partner, or whether you are the person with aphasia or you're the survivor. I am reading those posts. I see this. And that's what has brought me to really think about what are these episodes going to be about. It's about these subtle changes for your loved one. They survived, but now they're home and there's something that's just a little different. So before we go on with the episode, I want to address some comments that we have coming in. Okay, so Mary is saying, my husband used to laugh at my jokes, but now he just stares at me, totally expressionless, and it makes me feel like we've lost that connection. Mary, I have absolutely heard this before, and you all may be experiencing this. It's just blank, right? It's crickets. You say a joke or you tell something funny that you think is funny that normally your loved one would have reacted to before, but they're not reacting to it now. Let's go on to another comment here. Jacob is saying before his stroke, his dad was so quick-witted and social. Now he just doesn't engage the same way. I don't know if he's struggling to process conversations or if he just doesn't care anymore. That's a tough spot to be in, Jacob. And I get it, right? How do you interpret it? So, the first thing I'd say to you, Jacob, is you need to ask, Dad, did you hear what I said? And see if he can say it back to you. And it could very well be he says it back word for word to you, but yet he doesn't process it at that level. I want to give you an example. If you've been around kids or you have your own kids, there's a point as your kids are young and they're growing up, and all of the books that they're reading in school are what we would consider to be concrete. It is what it is, right? um The rainbow has 6 colors. The glass is full. Rocks are heavy, right? That's very concrete. But when books start switching more over to what we call inference, meaning you are reading between the lines, it's interpreting what is said that is not being said. The person with a right hemisphere stroke may not be understanding the in between the lines thing. It's like not understanding sarcasm. My friend I told you about earlier doesn't understand sarcasm, so she has to ask because her brain is just processing at a level that she's like, does she literally mean there's spilled milk? Or does this mean something different, right? The saying, don't cry over spilled milk. It's a saying. It doesn't mean I just spilled a gallon of milk. It means deal with it, get over it. It is what it is. Clean it up, move on, right? There's a different kind of interpretation. And so that can be very different with a right hemisphere stroke and even with a left hemisphere stroke. I'm not saying that you can't have it with a left hemisphere. Okay, let's keep going on. Personality and emotional changes. Um, you can have some other challenges. Impulsivity. Again, I want to direct you to any kids you know, or if you had your own kids. Being impulsive, where they interrupt frequently, blurt out thoughts, make quick decisions without thinking. I had a saying when my daughters were young, if there's not blood spurting onto a wall or your arm isn't hanging off your body, don't interrupt me when I'm on the phone. I had to say it when I'm on the phone, right? Didn't get to happen very often, but it was really, really, really hard to have phone calls when they were young because, as soon as that phone got to my head, mom, 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 and they're just impulsive. It's what they wanted at that moment, not thinking outside of themselves. Another common challenge could be reduced emotional expression. They may have a very flat face. They may not show emotion. Their voice may not show emotion. It doesn't, it is not a reflection that they don't care. Sometimes you have to ask, honey, I'm seeing that your face is not showing me and your voice is not showing me that you responded to what I just said. Ask them. Do not assume. The best thing you can do when you are living with a stroke survivor is to ask simple questions and wait for a response. And if you don't get a response, ask them again and say, honey, I'm waiting for you to respond to that. So the person may have reduced emotional expression and the partner may not be getting back what you expect to get from them. I encourage you, do not read into it. I'm saying straight up, do not read into this. Do not take it personally. This can be part of the stroke. Maybe it is their personality. I can't say, I don't know them. But the point is, this can be part of the issue after a stroke. Then we can have a lack of self awareness. The fancy word, let's see, how many syllables? Anosognosia. Okay, 5 syllables. Say it with me. Anosognosia. Anosognosia. Some survivors don't realize that they are having trouble processing information or responding differently. And this can make them really hard to communicate with. They have no idea. They have no idea. You say, honey, it's been 2 minutes. You didn't respond to my question. And they're still just looking at you like, weren't you going to say something, honey? Literal thinking. This is another issue that can happen with a right hemisphere. They may struggle with sarcasm, humor, and implied meanings. Remember how I said a few minutes ago about reading between the lines and sarcasm? It's raining cats and dogs. They may look out the window thinking, what the heck? Are there cats and dogs falling from the sky? They may take it literally. So these changes can be confusing and frustrating for care partners. It can feel like the person that you knew isn't the same. But these aren't personality choices. They are not doing this on purpose. I promise you, they are not doing this to make you upset. They are not doing this to be mean or spiteful or anything else. This is part of the stroke. And these are neurological changes as a result of that stroke. So, how can care partners help? If you're a care partner, you might feel like you're repeating yourself more often or that your loved one isn't responding how they used to. And here's how you can support them. I've got one, two, three, four, five, six. Number one, give more time. If they don't respond immediately, wait a few seconds before you repeat yourself. Their brain just may need more time to respond. Two, be direct and clear. Instead of saying, do you think we should invite Betty and Jim? Try, I'd like to invite Betty and Jim to dinner on Sunday. Pause. Does that sound good? Three, reduce distractions. If that Laker game is on, this is not the time to be asking them if Betty and Jim can come over for dinner or anything else you want to ask them. If they are focused on the game, pick another time. Let the game finish before you try to take this on. Reduce distractions. Or, maybe it's commercial break. Well, if the Laker girls are on, you may not be able to pull them away from the TV. But if it's a commercial, you could say, honey, I'm going to pause the TV. Pause, take control of that remote and then ask your question. Make sure you've got eye contact with them. Use visual cues. Sometimes you've got to talk with your hands or like, hey, honey, I was thinking we could do this. And maybe you've got something you can show them. Check for understanding. This is number 5. Instead of asking, did you get that? Honey, aren't you listening to me? Can you tell me what you heard me say, honey? I love you. Right? Do what you got to do. Sweeten them up to get them to say back what they heard from you because that could be very telling. Maybe it's how you said something or asked the question and they're not fully processing it. It is remarkable how you have to change how you phrase and say things. 6. Oh, sorry. It's late. 6. Be patient. Emotional differences are real. They may seem indifferent or blunt, but remind yourself this is not personal. They are not, I promise you, they are not doing this on purpose. Their brain is processing emotions differently. By understanding these changes, overall, we can reduce frustration, improve communication, and strengthen relationships. So we're going to wrap this up because I got book club to get to, folks. It's 7:40 in Austin, Texas, and my next door neighbor is hosting book club. So when I hang up with you guys, I'm going over there. Right hemisphere stroke affects how people process and respond to information, changing the way they engage in conversations and social interactions. You might find as the spouse, significant other, that you almost have to explain it to other people, not people at a party, but close friends and family. Hey, Jim just doesn't respond to sarcasm. He's going to look at you blank if you, Sam, keep with the jokes that you normally say. There might be a component to that. There's more to that, and we'll get into it in another episode. But right hemisphere changes can also impact understanding, emotional expression, and personality, often in ways that are hard to recognize at first. Care partners can help by being direct, slowing down, and checking for understanding and not taking it personally, while also learning how to navigate personality shifts with patience and support. I will tell you this: progress is always possible. For stroke survivors, if you've listened to me for anything more than just this episode, that you know that I do not believe in plateaus. There is no stopping your brain from healing. So we created a guide for that. 3 key reasons aphasia progress never stops. Get the link in the show notes and download your copy. For care partners, I see you. I understand what you're going through, whether your person has had a left hemisphere stroke or a right hemisphere stroke. I can help you be the care partner that you want to be. And you don't have to sacrifice yourself to do it. To find out more, check the show notes. I have a free email course ready for you to go right now. In the next episode about right hemisphere, we're going to talk even more about emotions and relationships and what care partners can do to help bridge that gap. Part of it is just starting the conversation. If you found this episode to be helpful, please share it with someone who needs it. Tag it, send it. Social media, it is what it is. It's all I can do to get out to you guys every week. If you know how to work social media, please, please, please help me get this out to more people. If you know someone who is a care partner, a spouse of someone who's had a stroke, or if you've had a stroke, please share this information. Okay, before we left, I was bad. I forgot to check the comments from Brenda. Brenda asks, are there any tricks to helping him stay on track in a conversation? He gets lost halfway through, and I feel like I have to fill in the gaps. Yeah, that is a tough one, Brenda. Absolutely. So the best thing you can do, being the listener in that situation, is know what is his topic. What is the topic that he brought up, and where do you think he's going with it? Because if he's getting long and long in what he's saying, you may naturally tune out and pretend that you're paying attention. The other thing is you can say, you lost me, because they're never going to get better unless you give them that feedback that you got lost. Honey, you were starting to talk about the thing at Disneyland about the Mickey Mouse, whatever, making it up. Just being able to reiterate back to them that it was Disneyland and it was Mickey Mouse might just be enough to help them get back on track. But this is something that can be helped with speech pathology treatment. But you got to work with a therapist that knows what they are doing, especially if your person is outside of that rehab, outside of that the first 6 to 9 months. You got to work with someone who has worked with stroke beyond this point, because there's other dynamics going on. But there are ways to help that. And I think that was duplicate. Oh, one more here, folks. Lucy, my mom used to always know when I was upset. Now, even if I'm clearly frustrated or near tears, she doesn't react. Is this an emotional disconnect, or is she just shutting down? It's Lucy, just based on what you wrote here, I would say it's an emotional disconnect. But that one instance isn't enough for you to say if that's the case or not. You have to look for patterns. And the other thing is, Um, you need to probably ask your mom, "Mom, I'm upset. Do you see that I'm upset?" And just ask the question. Again, this is like you being Sherlock Holmes, figuring out what's the mystery, figuring out the clues, putting the puzzle pieces together. It's easier said than done, and I know what I'm saying to you. Not having an emotional reaction is really important. You not getting offended, upset. Mom, do you see that I'm crying? Like tears are coming down my face, Mom. Do you see that I'm crying? What do you think that means? She may not be able to answer you because she just doesn't have that part of her brain working right now. Not to say that it can't come back with time and recovery and practice, but you, the care partner, have to, it's again easier said than done, not to react, not to take it personally. Because when you take it personally, that builds resentment and that changes your relationship with your person. Does that make sense? All right, folks, we're going to wrap it up for today. For care partners, if I can support you, I have lots of things on the pipeline. Lots of things. The reason I'm so tired today is because I've been working on them. If you want support, if you want to change your caregiving journey, if you want to get better control, make time for yourself, not lose yourself, I have a free email course ready for you right now. The link is in the show notes, and let me know how I can help you. Thank you all for being here. Went a little long tonight. Hope you have an amazing night, and we will see you next Tuesday night, 7 p.m., give or take, Central Daylight Savings Time. Thanks.